Good evening. Thank you for joining me this evening. My name is Marlis Leon. I'm the adult programming librarian here at Council Bluffs Public Library. This is the season of Thanksgiving, and our focus is on all that turkey and pumpkin pie. Or if you, like me, have been getting invitation to consider after invitation to consider in the mail to say, please help support my organization. I've got many such requests. Or if you've been listening to TV, you have been hearing about Giving Tuesday or Giving Wednesday. And so tonight, I thought it was very appropriate that I would have my friend and associate in many different ways over the last few years, Glennay Jundt from Thrivent Financial, come and speak on a very important subject, making a difference, how we can share our time, our talent, and our treasure. Please join me in welcoming Glennay Jundt.
Thank you, Marlis. I'm glad to be here tonight, and I just want to talk a little further about what it is that we can do to make a difference in the world. Imagine yourself making a difference, and I know that we all do that in some way throughout our lives. What do you see yourself doing? Are you volunteering your time? Making a big donation? Or maybe you're tackling some of humanity's most pressing issues like hunger or homelessness. Many people think that you have to be famous to make a big impact, but really, you don't need an endless supply of time and money. Making a difference doesn't have to happen on a grand scale to matter. The truth is, each one of us was put on this earth to make a difference in our own unique way. And we all have the power to make a positive change through purposeful expression of generosity that reflect what matters to you most. First, you'll identify your most important values. Second, you'll learn all about giving, including different types, and how your passions and emotions motivate you to give. Then you'll learn tips for evaluating your giving so you can start building a generosity plan. We'll wrap up by sharing where you can find some free resources to help you on your journey. Let's start by taking a look at the definition of generosity. It's shown here. The quality of being kind, understanding, and not selfish. When you read this, what comes to mind? Now let's look at the definition of stewardship. When you hear the words time, talents, and treasures, does anything different come to mind than it did when we talked about generosity or even read that definition a moment ago? Being a steward means making intentional choices, how we care for ourselves, our family, and our friends, and our community. While stewardship is often associated with the money that you give to church, it can actually have a broader significance and be used as a guiding principle for how we live and manage our time, talents, and treasure. We all have the ability to give, and there are many ways to do that. How and what we give is a personal decision. The important point to keep in mind is that we can make our giving even more meaningful by making choices that align with our life priorities or values. Let's take a deeper look into that concept. Values are things that matter most to a person. like faith or family, friends, or sharing with others. They can also act as principles that guide our actions and behaviors, a compass, if you will. Even if you don't realize what matters most to you is what drives the choices you make about how you live your life, including how you give. Understanding those values can help you make sense of your action and decisions and guide you into making intentional expressions of generosity. Take a look at this list of possible life priorities. There's a lot here. It's not even all of them. Take a couple minutes to identify your top 3. Jot down those words that resonate with you most. Make sure you choose the ones that reflect how you actually live your life and come up with your own if they're not on the list. I'll allow a minute or so for you to see. Now, if you were here with me tonight, I would have you share one of your top 3 values. So Marlis, what's one of yours?
Well, helping others.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. By doing this exercise, we're reinforcing what's important to us, and by extension, what's important to us is how we express our generosity in that. Let's look at some examples of how values can impact a person's life. Meet Tom. Tom grew up idolizing his Uncle Jim, a fun-loving national park ranger. Some of Tom's fondest memories are of walking the park's trails with Jim, trading jokes, and marveling at the natural world. Today, Tom's top 3 priorities are nature, family, and fun. He lives them out by spending a lot of time outdoors, hiking, camping, and biking, often with family. He'd like to spend even more time in nature and helping others explore the great outdoors too. And then there's Catherine. Catherine's parents met while volunteering in the Peace Corps. Generosity has been part of her life since she was 4 years old. When she first volunteered alongside her parents at the local soup kitchen, while handing out bowls and bread to people in need, she saw poverty up close. And she promised herself that when she grew up, she'd do something to fix it. Fast forward to today, and Catherine's top 3 priorities are helping others, like you, Marlis, family, and financial security. Volunteering is important to her because it honors her family's tradition of reaching out to people in need. She'd like to volunteer more and include her kids. She'd also like to be financially secure so that she can contribute to her children's college funds and the causes she cares about. Many of the choices we make aren't just influenced by what's most important to us, but also by our experiences. Understanding what has shaped our behavior in the past can give us insight into why we do what we do today. As we've just discussed, generosity can be even more meaningful when you choose to give with something that aligns with what matters most to you. To do that, it's important to understand the role that your passions and emotions play in motivating you to be generous. Passions are the things that you feel strongly about and energize you. For example, you might feel passionate about people who are homeless or children who don't get enough food. So ask yourself, what excites you and what are you passionate about? Emotions also play a role in what motivates you to share your gifts. So think about times that you've helped others, giving of yourself or a resource. How did it make you feel? Compassionate, joyful, proud, fulfilled? humble, or some other emotion? What emotion you have when you chose to be generous is what dictates how you will respond. While emotions vary from person to person, most people agree that the one associated with giving is deep gratification. Understanding your emotions and passions and how they motivate you helps make you more intentional in the choices you make when you give. And that, again, then makes it more meaningful. So what are some examples of generosity you see? Take a minute to think back. What made these acts so memorable? Why do you think they left a positive impression? How have these experiences influenced your generosity today? As you can see, impressions from the past and their influences on how we give are as varied and unique as each of us. You might not feel like it every day, but you likely are already living a generous life. To get a clearer picture of that, take a piece of paper and jot down a list of some of your current gifts, like your time, your talent, or your treasures that you've shared throughout the year. As you do, think about the following things. What inspires me to give? What priorities or values does my gift support? Who or what does my gift impact? You might be overlooking or forgetting some of your gifts because you didn't schedule or plan for them. That's why it's important to be aware of 3 types of giving. The first is spontaneous. This is when you're inspired to give at a particular moment, usually small amounts and not always reoccurring. An example would be taking up a collection at work for a sick coworker, or contributing to your neighborhood food drive. The second is intentional giving. It usually is budgeted for and occurs on a regular basis. For example, giving at church or a pledge to a local children's hospital. And the last is planned giving. This kind of giving has a scheduled time and amount and is typically for larger legacy type gifts, like giving to your church or alma mater. Have you ever given impulsively or spontaneously? I know I have. And they're all great examples of giving. Here's Sarah. Her friend suffered major injuries in a car accident, and the family was doing a fundraiser to pay for medical expenses. So Sarah offered to help serve sandwiches and refreshments at the event. And here's an example of intentional giving from the Peterson family. They wanted to support the Juvenile Diabetes Association after their niece was diagnosed with the disease. When they told their kids about it, they wanted to help too. And the kids invited the grandparents to chip in as well. The Petersons set a family savings goal for the upcoming year, and each of them, including the 8 and 11-year-old kids, decided how much each would share. Ruth talked about how proud she was of her kids and what they were willing to give from their own allowance to help raise money for this fund. You might be thinking, should giving always be planned or thought out somehow? Or is there a place for spontaneous giving, and why or why not? I think that giving because it comes from the heart, generally speaking, spontaneous or not, is always a good thing to do. You can even bring a little planning into your spontaneous giving by making random acts of kindness on a regular basis. They only take a moment, but can make a positive difference in someone's life. Can you think of some simple gestures or random acts of kindness you could plan to do on a regular basis to make a difference? It could be as simple as opening a door, buying that cup of coffee for the next person in line for you, telling someone that they look nice. Random acts of kindness don't have to be monetary to be kind. Before we move on to anything else, I want to emphasize that giving does not have to involve handing over money. That's an all too common misconception that ignores the power of giving from your heart. I just want to have a moment to take a look at these stats. 24% collect, prepare, distribute, and serve food. 18% tutor or teach young people. 17% mentor youth. 24% fundraise or sell items to raise money. Now that's a lot of people going beyond cash to give back. And here's another amazing fact for you. In 2019, through our own Thrivent action teams, volunteers spent 17.2 million hours across America in their communities helping. So the possibilities of living generously really are endless, and you get to choose when, how, and what you want to share. Okay, so we've talked about the different types of giving, how simple random acts can make a difference, and what motivates us to give. Now it's time to pull all those ideas together so you can start to evaluate your giving in depth. When it comes to giving, we all have limited resources. After all, there are only 24 hours in a day. That means you have to decide how and when and where to direct those resources. Remember, resources are time, talents, and treasures, so it's not always money. Evaluation is the last step in making sure your giving aligns with your priorities. So think about your current acts of generosity. Take a moment to write down which one is the most meaningful for you and why. And then let's consider the other side. Those gifts that aren't so meaningful to you and don't align with your top 3 values. These are some questions to consider. Should I stop this giving and direct my resources elsewhere? If yes, what do I want to support more? Or do I want to start supporting something new? If no, what do I need to do to help this gift better align with my priorities? At the beginning of our time together, I promised you 2 free resources to help you be more intentional about your giving. Let me walk you through those right now. The first resource is Thrivent's Generosity Expressions Assessment. If interested, reach out to me and I'll give you this 5-minute personalized quiz to help you identify your strengths across different expressions of generosity and learn how you can grow in your giving. I'd be happy to follow up with you after this workshop. Another way is if you want some help to take a deeper dive, the second resource is a complimentary customized strategy session with me, free of charge. And in that session, 3 things will happen. We'll look at your overall financial picture and prioritize the goals that are most important to you. Second, you'll walk out with 1 or more strategies you can use to strengthen your financial picture or prioritize your giving. And third, if you'd like help implementing those strategies, we can talk about how we can work together to do that. I hope that you found today's presentation useful, and thank you for watching. I hope that we can continue our conversation, and I'm happy to help you further. If you're ready to schedule an appointment or provide feedback, simply reach out to me, either by email or phone, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or my webpage. Thank you for your time tonight.
So I have a question.
Oh, I forgot questions.
Questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. So my question that came from home is this. Is it wiser to give generously, for example, with Giving Tuesday,
Okay,
to a variety of organizations and a little bit of money to each of them? Or is it wiser instead to give a generous gift to one organization? In other words, for example, when they have that Giving Tuesday thing, all these various organizations are in the list that you can give to. And you can give $10, $50, $100, your choice. I choose to give a little bit to many people. But when I think about it, I'm going, well, that's my 2 pennies, in each pot, per se. What's the general thinking from the receiver end of something like that?
I think it's a great question, Marlis. I'm going to answer this from 2 different perspectives.
Oh, okay.
So many who may be watching will not know that I previously was executive director at the Habitat for Humanity here in Council Bluffs. So to that end, I will say every dollar matters. And your $10 adds up along with everyone else's. So if you have 20 different charities that you want to give to, by all means, do so. My different perspective on that would be in accordance with our presentation tonight. Do those gifts align with what's important to you? And if they don't, why are you giving to them? So maybe if you don't know why you're giving to them, the answer there would be magnify your gift elsewhere in place of those ones that may not actually have that meaning they should, right? However, there's so many great nonprofits out there that are doing so much good work. Let your heart lead you in how you give. And if that means many at little amounts, it does add up. And if that means 2 at bigger amounts, it still adds up. So I gave you, it's an emotion driven question, right? Just like we were talking about, because it is our emotion and experiences that tend to make us lean in the directions we do, like homelessness or feeding people or building houses or whatever the case may be. And there are a lot of great organizations in this metro area that do a lot of good work. So
Yeah, so I was going to suggest that you add to your list of reasons and things that we value. You have family on there, you have love on there, but I think just children should be an entry on there.
children were not on there.
No,
Oh, children
No.
should be on there.
because, for example, some of the places that I give to are like Children's Square and St. Jude Hospital and Lutheran Family Services.
Yes, and so
And
those
are
all align.
children organizations that are helping children. Oh, and Boys and Girls Club,
Yes,
you know. But then I think about some of the organizations I give to because I have a connection with them in the community as to I know staff within the organization, or I have been on some kind of a planning board with some of the people that are involved in these various organizations, and I know that they're important that way. So, yeah, you're right. There are many reasons that we give, and there's many options for how we give our financial support.
and I
But
think
then-
too, there's times in our lives that we shift, right? So we don't always
Oh, I suppose,
necessarily
yes.
give in the same direction our entire life, right? So at times we may shift our giving to something else, and that's okay. It sounds to me like all that are on your list have that emotional or value-driven reason why you contribute. So just tell your at-home question person that every gift does matter from the perspective of the nonprofit itself, because if 100 people gave $10, that's $100. And from a perspective of Habitat, that could buy a door or 2 windows to a house. So that's huge when you think about the material concept of what little amounts can add up to.
That is good. I tried to put down my current time spent, talent spent, and finances spent, and I keep thinking of something else. You know, I just added that in my time, I'm involved in community organizations. That's giving of my time too,
It's
right?
giving. It's absolutely giving. I remember when I was a single mom and didn't have a ton of money by no means. And so I think my common misconception, especially at that time, was I don't have money to give. But when I realized I could give my time, that I could spend my time to help, that became a huge part of how I gave. And still to this day is how I contribute, in addition to the financial as well. But if it weren't for realizing that my talents mattered too, some organizations would have never benefited from the time I was able to offer. And it was a lot of time. So we must remember that it doesn't have to be monetary to be giving, but that we can all give, right?
Thank you.